Membership fees apply after free trial. Cancel anytime.
The number one reason why people aren't consistent with their fitness is that they don't have enough time. But if you want to get stronger and healthier, and most importantly, feel good, then you have to make yourself your number one priority. I'm Jennifer Jacobs with Beachbody, and my Job One program is easy, effective, and for everyone. And it's only 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week. So now you do have the time to put yourself and your health first. Just go to beachbody.com and you can try Job One today for free.
Hello, and welcome to the Proactive Caregiving Podcast. As a CPA with over 20 years as an industry accountant, Jessica stepped away from the corporate world to become a full-time caregiver for her mother. Having learned invaluable lessons along the way, she is now here to share those with you and to invite you to join her on this caregiver's journey. Here is your host, Jessica Cannon.
Hello, everybody. I'm so glad you're here with me today. I am the Proactive Caregiver, and I specialize in educating others on how to be proactive by empowering you, the caregiver. If you cannot take care of yourself, then you cannot take care of your loved one. You know, the rising caregiver needs is more important now than ever before with the challenges caregivers face in our new normal around the world. But part of the need here is simply better information. In the United States alone, the number of caregivers has risen by over 10% since 2015, from 43 million caregivers to 53 million in 2020 pre-COVID even. This demographic includes younger caregivers than ever before, and it's between the ages of 18 to 34. This is why I asked Judy Cornish to come back on with me today. I wanted to go further into dementia and the stages and why or how it's not a disease. Caregivers often ask how to care for their loved ones before they even consider what you're caring for or why they need a specific type of care when it comes to dementia. When we consider dementia as a disease, then we begin to separate the healthy from unhealthy mentally, which promotes the loss of compassion. We focus on their behaviors before we focus on the individual. And although it is important to understand the behaviors common with the progression of dementia, it is just as important not to lose sight of our loved ones as a person, as an individual, and not a diseased individual. So Judy Cornish is an author and founder of the Dementia and Alzheimer's Wellbeing Network, or DAWN. She is a creator of the DAWN method and a retired elder law attorney. She has 2 books, awesome books. Her 2 books are The Dementia Handbook and Dementia with Dignity. These 2 books take person-centered dementia care from theory to practice by identifying the skills not lost to dementia. Through DAWN, Judy provides counseling, private classes, and an online video program for families and home caregivers. Her goal is to help families learn how to truly support their loved ones and enjoy more companionship as they live with dementia. Thank you for coming back on with me today, Judy. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad to, Jessica. Thank you so much for inviting me back.
Yes, we just barely scratched the surface last time. So I wanted to be able to take it in another direction and go a little further. And one of those areas that I wanted to go into is, from what I've discovered and what I've experienced with Mom, and in my own personal, humble opinion, I've come to the understanding that dementia is not truly a disease, but it's more of that degenerative process or even a syndrome because there are so many different types of dementia.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. We've, in the United States, we've talked and heard so much about Alzheimer's, but, in my 10 years of caring for people and working in the world of dementia care, Alzheimer's isn't really the most common. Right?
No.
And I know the Alzheimer's Association say it is, but it wasn't in my experience, or it hasn't been yet.
Right.
There are many reasons for or why somebody might develop dementia.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, the most common that I've run into is dementia that is caused by cardiovascular disease.
Yes, that's
So
so true.
many of us, so many of us have high blood pressure, or we take the medications that are prescribed for heart conditions. And there, when we begin to think about dementia, we need to think about it as a syndrome or a condition.
Right.
And technically that's what it is. It's
Mhm.
if from a medical perspective, dementia is ongoing deterioration of
Mhm.
certain cognitive skills. And for us non-medical professionals, the easiest way to think about it is that your loved one will be losing skills in 3 areas. Your loved one will lose one of our 2 thinking processes or systems. So they're going to lose their rational thinking skills.
Mhm.
And I think you and I've talked quite a bit about what those are and how that plays out in your loved one's reactions and emotions and behaviors.
Right.
The other thing people lose is memory skills, not just their memories, but their actual skill of remembering,
Mm.
which is so different from natural aging, where we just, have a harder time recalling things quickly.
Right.
And so what I say, or my terminology, I use a term I stole from Daniel Kahneman with his permission. And he says, he's a lovely man, by the way. And you can learn so much about dementia by reading his book, Thinking Fast and Slow. Wonderful book to understand our 2 very different but equally important thinking processes. But we lose, dementia takes away those memory skills.
Mhm.
And so we lose the remembering self, and we continue to be fully experiential. Our experiential self carries on
Mhm.
untouched. But then we also lose attention skills. And there's 5 different types of attention skills, and we lose 3 of them. And so these 3 losses, rational thinking skills, memory skills, attention skills,
Mhm.
it doesn't matter what is causing or what has precipitated your dementia, your condition of dementia. That will be common, but in a different pattern. And so if your loved one is experiencing Alzheimer's, very likely your loved one is experiencing the loss of memory skills primarily. And you'll be able to tell that they are losing knowledge of the near past ever deeper into the distant past.
Hmm.
And so people who are experiencing Alzheimer's one of the things I've noticed is that their sense of what today is forever retreating deeper into the past.
Mhm.
And so they believe things are true that were true, 20, 30, 40 years ago. But, other dementias that were caused by other diseases like Parkinson's or,
Mhm.
FTD, or, dementia that's caused by a reaction to an anesthetic
True.
or a drug. These dementias, it's not going to be memory skills that go first.
No.
You're very likely to see changes in their ability to use rational thinking. And so, like cardiovascular disease,
Mhm.
the dementia that's caused by high blood pressure or erratic blood pressure, too little or too much oxygen going to various places in the brain.
Mhm.
With that type of dementia, you'll see people who are able to remember some things, but other things they just can't hang on to at all. And it's much more erratic, and the pattern is different. Somebody might be unable to use rational thinking. They might not be able to prioritize ideas or actions, or they might not be able to follow a sequence or even perceive it. They might not be able to have you explain something to them and be able to follow your explanation and see why you are right and they're wrong. These are
Right.
all, this analysis, comparative thinking, perceiving cause and effect,
Mhm.
all of that, those are all skills that are embedded in our rational thinking processes. And so very often I'll find somebody has really good memory skills, but they're easily distracted.
Mhm.
They're already seeing losses to attention skills, and they just cannot make a good judgment. can't keep themselves safe because they can't use rational thinking. And that's very different from Alzheimer's.
Definitely. I think because of those differences, I can now see why Alzheimer's is misdiagnosed so often, because those are the type of behaviors or skills that our loved ones begin to lose, but we don't notice it as much because we're so busy with our day-to-day life that there may be those momentary annoyances, or it just seems odd, or we dismiss it because we just aren't really paying that close of attention. We've got so much going
Yeah.
on. And then when they get to the point where memory does start to be jogged, that's where I feel like the stages start to come into play, because by the time they approach that, and that's the part they notice, like, well, wait a minute, Mom,
Right.
I just told you that yesterday. How do you not remember that? Or, Mom, I said
That's right.
this morning. How do you not remember that? And by that point that they go to the doctors and you double down, and not all doctors are knowledgeable or understand enough about dementia, that the assumption is Alzheimer's.
Right. I've even had GPs within the last 5 years where we'll go in. I'll be accompanying my client, and the family couldn't be there, and so one of us is taking the client, and the GP will say, well, yeah, I think it looks like Alzheimer's. And I'll say, well, do you mean specifically Alzheimer's disease, or do you mean dementia? And I've had
Right.
GPs say, well, they're the same.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, actually, no, they're not. You can Google that.
Exactly.
but it just seems that most of us are not medical professionals, and yes, let's try to get a diagnosis.
Right.
Let's try, and let's be aware that there's more than memory skills that disappear, fade away with dementia. But then, because we're not medical professionals, we need boots on the ground help.
Yes.
But let me tell you here's one family. Maybe this will help your listeners kind of imagine what it's like when it's not Alzheimer's disease that's causing the dementia. I had an older couple. They're in their 80s, and the husband was a retired doctor, and he had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's probably about 5 years earlier. And the kids wanted to have caregivers help mom with dad. And dad didn't have any anosognosia at all. He knew that he was losing cognitive skills. He could tell, and he was predominantly losing memory skills. And his sense of the present, I didn't get to talk to him long enough or spend enough time with him to really find out where he was living cognitively. But as we sat and talked, the husband and the wife and I, she was acknowledging, she knew she was a caregiver. She was a primary caregiver of her husband. And she was telling me about all his problems. He can't remember this, he can't remember that. He can't remember that this is our new home here in the assisted living complex. And so I had to put new locks on the door so that he wouldn't leave at night in an attempt to go home.
Wow.
And so I'm making notes and saying, well, that would be difficult. And poor husband, he's looking more and more despondent and brokenhearted as his wife lists all of his errors and failures. And she says, and he keeps trying to escape at night because he doesn't know this is home. He keeps trying to go to the office, but where he ends up is over at the main building, waiting outside the gym for somebody to have a key card to let him in. But she says, we're going to go to the family reunion down in Colorado, and I think it'll be really good for him. I think it'll jog his memory to see, we've got over 100 family members that'll be there.
Ooh.
And and he had sleep apnea, and that was probably part of the trouble. And so he slept in a recliner every night because otherwise he just simply could not breathe, and he could no longer use the CPAP machine. So his rational thinking was somewhat impaired. I said, oh my goodness, so how are you guys going to get there? This is a lot. Traveling is really hard when you don't have a lot of memory skills. And she said, oh, it's not a problem. I'm going to drive. And I said, that's going to be probably that'll probably take about 3 days. And she said,
Jeez.
yes, I think it will. It'll be 3 days. We'll have to get hotels 2 or 3 nights along the way.
Oh.
And I said, well, but then, my goodness, what will you do about locking the door?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, that's not a problem. Hotels have locks on doors. So right away, that caught my attention because I thought, now, wait a minute, here's a failure of comparative thinking.
Mm-hmm.
She had to put locks high up on the door of the home, the condominium, and yet now she thinks a simple lock on a hotel door is going to be sufficient.
Right.
They're going to be on a highway somewhere. How is she going to keep them safe? And so I was trying to think of ways to see more of her thinking. And I said, but what about his need to sleep in a recliner? He can't be lying down in a bed beside you in a hotel room.
Exactly.
And she looked at me and she said, my dear, hotels, no, what she said was, I will just call the front desk and ask them to please bring me a recliner.
Mm.
Now, what was the failure of rational thinking there? Right?
Yeah.
She thinks when you go to a hotel, they will bring you a extra cot, if you have children.
Right.
So why would they not bring you a recliner? Now, that is comparative thinking. That showed me that she had severe impairment in her rational thinking, but I could not convince the family that dad is at risk because mom is also exhibiting a different type of dementia.
Exactly.
Mom had excellent memory and mom had excellent attention skills, but mom's rational thinking was not keeping the two of them safe and was beginning to show failures. And so, I didn't get to work with that family because mom decided, the wife decided that I wasn't taking, or I was going to be challenging her. I think she felt threatened. And so that, this is what we're up against with dementia. It is more than a loss of memory skills.
Exactly.
And often the biggest problems, you can't really put your finger on it unless you're, like you say, we're all so busy and we live so far apart. And how on earth do you put your finger on a certain loss of rational thinking? So, and yet that's what puts people at risk.
Absolutely. When they try and become, it's like their new type of rationalization, but it just doesn't make sense. And it trying to make sense for them, I can see why she responded with that. It was a threat to her because I'm sure he may have been able to live the way he has and compensate and find ways to, just like mom did. Oh, I just forgot momentarily because of I'm just tired, or I'm just. There was always something simple that she could say and excuse it away. And she was probably doing the same because she wanted you to focus on him, and the fact that you were focusing on her. Now it's that defensive, like, wait a minute, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not doing what he's doing, but not being able to see the other things that she was doing. Yeah,
she was not able to perceive her losses of rational thinking, and boy, was her sense of autonomy threatened.
Yeah,
that I would focus on her. But yeah, so when it's so important that we, and I fully agree, we do need to get diagnosis if we can, and our medical schools, even up to 12, 15 years ago, they weren't teaching that dementia was a condition of ongoing cognitive impairment.
Right.
They were teaching that dementia was normal aging, because that's what we used to think. And it takes quite a while to get new research and new results and new knowledge into our medical education system.
Yes.
And so, not to blame doctors entirely, but they haven't really had good education yet regarding dementia.
I agree.
And the various types.
I also think that because of that thought process of dementia being the normal part of aging, I think that's also another reason why many doctors in their studies and when they're going for their initial degree is why they choose not to take courses in dementia.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And to me, because I didn't intend to become involved with dementia. I intended to be a semi-retired elder law attorney in, that nice little town, Moscow, Idaho. But it when I did get involved, I couldn't help it. I could, it was a neighbor. Usually it's somebody in your family. And here was this lovely neighbor. And I just did not want to see her moved into a care facility away from her home, I think of 56 years, just because she was a little forgetful. And she truly did have Alzheimer's. But as I worked with more, and my law practice went on hold because I could see it wasn't that people just become crazy,
No.
and that's been said for decades in Europe and America and Britain, but it's not true. And I could see it wasn't true. And so I couldn't just walk away. I had to stick with it until I found the pattern, the metaphor, the way that we who are not medical professionals, the way we could look at it and make sense out of it. And so to recognize, well, we know we've got two sets of thinking skills. We only lose one. And it's just a secondary one. Rational thinking is a set of tools.
Yes.
Really important tools if you're going to function in a fast changing world of technology.
Yeah.
Really, much easier to function if you lived in the same village, in the same house that you were born in, and your job was farming the same fields your parents and grandparents before you farmed. Much easier to raise a crop of carrots than it is to jump on the subway and go work in a large office building downtown and work on computers. Totally different skills required. And life did used to be simpler and quieter. And so I think maybe we were able to confuse dementia and natural aging, maybe in earlier times. But now that we have the world we have today, we as families, we need to understand what it means to help somebody. We need to understand what their strengths are going to be. And we need to understand the stages they're going to go through, just to recognize how we can help and how we should help. Because one of the things I learned, and boy, it was difficult to learn this because it's paradoxical. I learned that with dementia care, you always want to provide as little care as possible. And that sounds just wrong, doesn't it?
Yeah, even hearing that, it makes me feel uncomfortable because I'm thinking, how is that possible? Because they need so much assistance.
And it's, when you're losing these rational thinking abilities, you're going to make bad decisions from the simplest thing of putting beans on the stove to cook, turn them on high, get distracted, walk away, leave the room. Now you're really at risk. You might burn that house down. But the thing with dementia is that most of us experience dementia as elders at the latter end of life, and we've already been adults for decades. And we are very capable. We were very, very capable. We lived our own lives. We were fully autonomous. We are quite used to being respected and having dignity, and being able to make decisions for ourselves, and having to live with our decisions. We accept that as our rights and as our due in life. And then when we begin to lose skills, when the family, when your kids or your friends start crowding around and saying, okay, now let us take over. The knee-jerk reaction of people, whether they're experiencing anosognosia as well as dementia, and what that means is whether they are experiencing dementia in the part of the brain that would and does give us self-knowledge, so they become unable to perceive their changing skills, the deficits that they are developing. That whether people are experiencing dementia alone or dementia with anosognosia as well, and are unable to perceive what's happening, everybody wants to preserve autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
And the knee-jerk reaction when people start trying to take away your autonomy is to shut them out. And I've worked with people where they've been just shut and locked the doors and wouldn't even let the kids come in to the home. We had one man who did that. I think it was over a year before anybody could get inside the home. I think one of his sons took him out for lunch, and the inside of the home was horrific.
Yeah.
Absolutely horrific.
Mm-hmm.
So really what we need to do is be as aware as we can of which skills our loved one is losing, and provide enough care that it's like we're picking our battles.
Yeah.
And you provide as much care as you can as they will accept. And if you do that, if you're not pushing care on them, then when they begin to feel insecure, they will indicate and allow and welcome more care. But that's, it takes, when I teach the Dawn method, I teach it in 8 2-hour classes essentially. And so this is more than we can talk about today to explain all of that. But dementia is full of paradoxes.
Mm-hmm.
But to understand the stages your loved one will go through, because it doesn't matter what type of dementia it is,
Right.
or really which skills they're losing predominantly at first. There are some really clear stages from the perspective of function.
Definitely.
And, how we function is an indication of our emotional needs, our skills, cognitively and physically, and our awareness of ourselves. So it's a combination. But if you think about dementia from that perspective, how our functioning or our ability to function changes, then it's easier to see the path you're on.
It is.
And it's easier to see where your loved one was, where they are now, and where they're going to go next.
Right.
And that's such a help.
That's where the stages. So for me, once I did this for a couple of years, caring for mom after a couple of years, I never even heard of or thought of what stages, because that was another thing. Many times the neurologist would refer to early stage, middle stage. Middle is kind of split into a little bit middle to late stage, and then the final stages. And to me, hearing that, it just didn't really make enough.
Register.
No, it doesn't, because I thought, well, what do you mean by early? I mean, is that an age range? Is that are symptoms? What are the symptoms that are early? And so that's when I finally started to look into the stages. And as I started reading through the breakdown of stages, and even the stages themselves have a little bit of controversy around them, just because people want to focus on Alzheimer's versus dementia as a whole, and how the brain is being affected and those skills, because it really becomes that roadmap. You got to understand, and you become that detective almost for your loved one, and start thinking, have they had any head injuries? And no, they've never had a head injury, but then you forget, but they had some mini strokes. Okay, so that is in its sense a head injury. So we're thinking vascular. And so you go down this little rabbit hole to start understanding what vascular dementia is, and then you start making sense of the stages. And then it started to really make sense to me, because now it's actual behaviors listed out of what I could expect. And I was able to acknowledge, I've seen that. Yep, she's done that. Yep. Oh, wow. So according to these stages, she's in stage 5 now. But this was years into it, many years into it.
And there's so much stress in not knowing where we're headed.
Exactly.
Families come to me for, to consult, and their primary question is, well, here's what we know so far, but where are we headed? Where will we go next? How do we know when she's going to need more care?
Yeah.
And I think I hear that question every time I teach a family.
Right.
Just how do we know how and when our loved one will need more care, more intervention? And, to me, what caused me to get involved with dementia in the first place is I truly believe that in the United States in particular, we've lost sight of what it means to be an elder.
Mm-hmm.
And we have this confusion, and we think of, we accept childhood. We think, yeah, childhood, right? Children, childhood. That's when people are learning and they're growing, and they're
Mm-hmm.
going to make mistakes. They're going to fail. They're not going to be fully capable. But
Mm-hmm.
we expect that because it's the time of playing, learning, growing. So we've got it down about childhood. We understand that we adults are to look after children,
Mm-hmm.
and we understand adulthood. Adulthood, that's when we should be responsible. We should be gathering assets and resources, and we should be working hard. We should be looking after children because they need care, and we
Mm-hmm.
should be um, becoming experts in various fields, and we do this for our adult years. And then we get confused. We think, we look at our elders and we look at them in terms of what they can no longer do, as if they were still adults.
Right.
Oh, mom, she can't keep track of her keys anymore. She's always losing things.
Mm-hmm.
Or, well, dad, we can't trust him to drive anymore. Or, my parents, they don't have the energy to keep the house up anymore.
Mm-hmm.
My mom used to enjoy playing bridge, and she just doesn't even want to go hang out with her friends anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about them as if they're broken adults.
Right.
And they're not. They're elders. Life has 3 stages, and we are children who learn, grow, and play. Play is how we learn and grow. We are adults who accumulate and accomplish
Mm-hmm.
and are successful and capable. And then we move into the stage of elderhood. And elderhood is not about accumulating, it's about sharing.
Right.
Sharing your time, sharing your wisdom, sharing your experiences, sharing your wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a time of doing, it's the time of being. It's when we're supposed to just stop and relax and stop accomplishing, because our skills are waning, whether they're physical or cognitive skills. Things are slowing down.
Right.
And that period of being, truly being rather than doing, is when the elder is enjoying the opportunity that the child did in the opposite way. Children need time and space to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Adults need to be working and producing and be capable, but elders need time and space to reflect
Right.
back on a long life. And we need that time. And the thing that has kept me from ever considering going back into law, resuming my law practice, is the realization that I have been given through dementia, through choosing to put my career aside and just spend time with people who are experiencing it. I've been given the most wonderful gifts
Mm-hmm.
of time and presence, and being able to help these elders that I've worked with to live their final chapters with dignity and as much autonomy as I can provide for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so my stance when I talk about dementia care or the Dawn method, I'm coming from the perspective of, I recognize elderhood. I recognize natural aging. I recognize that dementia is different than natural aging, but it's an epidemic, and it has been an epidemic in this country for some time. And I believe that it's my duty, and it's part of my purpose, is when I have the honor of working with an elder who's experiencing dementia, I support that person's autonomy and dignity to the best of my ability. And so all of my interactions, I'm trying to think of, okay, how can we do this so that this person feels dignified and feels that they can still make decisions, even though I know they're not capable of actually doing it on their own. How can I support their decision-making abilities?
Right.
And so when I talk about the stages of dementia, I'm talking about how people move from independence, from autonomy as adults, into elderhood. But sometimes they're not even, we have adult onset, younger onset dementia all the time now. But how does somebody go from being independent to needing full-time care.
Mm-hmm.
And those of us who are not medical professionals, we don't stand by and tabulate and diagnose and categorize our loved ones' emotional responses as symptoms of a diseased brain. We are standing with and we are supporting our loved ones' fading ability and fading abilities. And our purpose is to preserve their dignity and autonomy. So to me, that's what the stages of dementia should reflect.
Right. I agree.
It's rather a long answer, I know, but
No, that's perfect, because when you look at this on the grand scheme of things, I mean, trying to break down the levels and the deterioration, the process that the brain is going through, and the things that our loved one is experiencing, I mean, it didn't make sense to me until I was able to find that moment of being, and I think it's interesting that you mentioned it that way, that once we become into elderhood, then we have that opportunity to actual be a person being, as opposed to doing. Because
right.
this has been over the years with Mom, it has been a very interesting and emotional journey, understanding what is actually happening, what's happening to her, what is my role in her life, how can I help her best, and not impede her sense of autonomy, or even alienate her and make her feel like I don't love her or I don't consider her, just because that rationale of what I'm trying to do doesn't compute the way it used to. And so this has been a gift for me, in a sense, that this gift of time to be with her, time to understand her, time to learn what I myself need to look out for and be aware of, and have enough time to even course correct and kind of change things.
Yeah. Because, we forget, I think we're confused in our culture that we are not machines or robots. We are human beings, and we have intrinsic value, period. To simply be, you are 100% of value.
Yes.
If you do nothing, if all of your abilities have faded away, and it always breaks my heart when I hear people say, oh yeah, my mom, she's got Alzheimer's, or she's got dementia, and we lost my father to dementia, he's not dead yet.
Yeah.
And I think, what are you talking about? Wait a minute. Even if your loved one has lost all ability to initiate communication on their own, is in a fetal position, in a bed, unable to get out of bed, unable to eat, they are present. And we are beings, and we're called human beings for a reason, and it's because we exist in the present. And in the present is where we communicate. Now, just because I've lost the ability to initiate communication, or just because I've lost the ability to recall the events of my past life, does not mean I am not fully experiential. And I've sat with clients and been told by caregivers, oh, it's a waste of time, she's not going to respond, she can't respond, she's just a vegetable. And I go sit there and say, hi Mary, guess who I'm Judy, you know who I am? I'm Judy, I'm your friend Judy, you and I, we've been friends for years, we really love each other. Oh, I remember how we met. And I will tell people who they are, who I am, who they love, who loves them. And then I make sure I tell them enough stories that I know from their life to tell them that they have lived a good life. And I've seen people, just like playing music for people, like Dan Cohen with Music and Memories, prove people come back to life. They open up, their eyes open, they begin to laugh and chuckle and reach out and hold your hand and squeeze your hand and start talking. And it's because we need to recognize that even if our loved one has lost these skills, memory skills, communication skills, whatever they be, we haven't. And in the present, if we are being in the present, that's where you have access to companionship. It's not in the past, it's not in the future, it's right now. And that's where you have the ability to express love. You can express love and feel love in the present, but you cannot do that in the past or the future. It's all right here in the present. And that's the job. That's the role of our elders, is to be in the present and not be so able to do so that the rest of us who are so busy doing as we need to as adults notice.
Right.
And are reminded that our intrinsic value is to be in the present.
That's
so
perfect.
Sorry, I'll chatter about that all day.
Oh no, I agree 100% with that, because that's something I learned along the way, and even more recently, because when I finally accepted that I had to step into mom's world, it it changed everything, and it slowed me down. I was going, doing, and life was just on this course of checking off the boxes on to-do lists, trying to become something that probably wasn't even in my cards to become. But, I was always doing, but then stepping into her world and having to really slow things back down, I started to see see life in general in a totally different way. And then I was in that struggle of finding comfort and actually being able to live in this present moment, because I was trying to continue on, prepare for tomorrow, prepare a day that may not even become and not even guaranteed to me. But I was always in that future part, or grieving with mom, or because of this process, always in the past. And so that's something that I came across from Eckhart Tolle, who is he's the
I love his first quote.
Okay, so for those of you who don't, Eckhart Tolle is a contemporary spiritual teacher, and this is something that really spoke to my heart when I came across this, going through this dementia journey with mom. Is he's an author of The Power of Now, and he says, unease, anxiety, tension, stress, worry, all forms of fear are caused by too much future and not enough presence. And then he continues and he says, guilt, regret, resentment, grievances, sadness, bitterness, and all forms of non-forgiveness are caused by too much past and not enough presence. It was like the light bulb went on, and I really started to pay closer attention, and I wanted mom to tell me stories of her life and her struggles and how she got there. And slowing down and finding that present moment with her, I began to appreciate it way more than I ever did before.
Because think about the past. Think back to your favorite memory of the past, whatever it be, what pops into your head. Was it a 3-week period of time you spent in Maui? No. It was a few of the wonderful moments in the present of that came during that 3-week period of time. But you can think of fabulous moments of being truly in the present throughout your life. They're special. And, as caregivers, there is nothing more grueling than being the primary caregiver. Except maybe being the primary caregiver during a pandemic. And, just when we thought we had it as bad as it could get, whammo, there you go. Here's another epidemic for you.
Exactly.
But, but respite, we need respite desperately.
Absolutely.
I can remember being a young mother and knowing that I desperately needed respite. And it just isn't available in our society, not to adults. We don't have, what did they have in medieval Europe? They had convents. You could go hang out in a convent and have a break for a couple of weeks or something, right? I mean, other cultures have respite built in, not ours. When we're adults, we're on duty and we're to produce. And that's just grinding, relentless fatigue. And it wears us out. But in the moments, just like Eckhart Tolle says, if you stop, and boy, if you need a break as a caregiver, literally your break, your vacation is right there in the eyes of your loved one. Sit down, stop, look them in the eye, just look right into your loved one's eyes. And for 3 seconds, send the message, I love you. I am so glad I am with you. And I promise you, you're going to get more reward and release and relief and respite than you could ever get spending 3 weeks in Hawaii.
Right.
It's in the moment. It's right
Mm-hmm.
there. And boy, what is it that people who are experiencing dementia, what are they so well equipped for? They are 100% equipped to experience the present.
Yes.
No distractions from memories or from remembering skills, no ability to go to the past and be distracted by it, and no ability to go to the future because that takes rational thinking skills.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so they're trapped in the present, not mindfully by choice, like we have to choose, but because they can't get out of it. And yet, guess what's in the present with them? All sources of beauty are in the present.
Mm-hmm.
You listen to music in the present. You look at beautiful colors, flowers, or scenes in the present. You pet a kitten or stroke a dog's head or lean
Mm-hmm.
against a horse in the present. And all of that sensory stimulation, all of those sensations are only available in the present.
Yes.
And so if we need, that's where to go for respite. As your mom, as your loved one goes further into dementia, if you're the primary caregiver, you're going to go through periods of time when they cannot sleep at all. So neither will you.
Mm-hmm.
You will go through periods of time when they cannot understand or comprehend or even begin to feel that the building they're currently in is the one they ought to be in.
Right.
And so you will be on duty, constantly trying to figure out ways to move their attention to something else other than leaving.
Mm-hmm.
And there will be no respite except in the moment. It's in those moments when you sit down and just grab baked cookies, sit down with a cookie each and just eat the cookie totally in the present, maybe with the perfect cup of tea,
Mm-hmm.
It's so hard for us when we've been so accustomed and trained to think about value in what we do rather than value in what we are.
Right.
To understand what truly lifts our souls and feeds us exists. And it's when you just are right there with somebody else, savoring the moment.
And that is what helps. And we live it day by day. So if you can be in the moment, then you're living one day at a time and not focused on, oh, how much time do they have left?
Right.
Because
that'll break your heart.
Yeah, that was something that did a number on me too, trying to stay, again, being in that future moment and panicked and worried, how much time does she have left? How much can I squeeze into her remaining days? And scheduling out what I wanted to do with her and where I wanted to take her and what I wanted her to experience and to jog that memory, just as you were mentioning earlier. And then I realized me trying to help her jog her memory may be more stressful, and on both of us for that matter. And it was just finding the peace and acceptance to be in the moment and accept it as it is, one moment at a time, one day at a time. And that's what I was able to do. To bring it back a little bit, I was finally able to do that once I started to understand the stages and understand what was coming next. And so when it did happen and it did start to, the little things that she was going to lose next, when I noticed that, oh, here it is, it was a one day, one off kind of thing. And then a couple days later, and then a couple days. And then I realized, okay, I think we're entering yet another stage, or we're going further into the current stage. And so it wasn't as much anxiety about her future or the loss of the pending future. It was reminding myself of, okay, now we're in a new present. Now we're in a revised present, but still in the present.
Yeah, we're here. We are here now. Kind of a thought,
right?
And to kind of be able to see where you are, to me, no matter what type of dementia you're looking at 6 stages, and the way I name stages and the way I look at it is according to how the person's functioning how the person is functioning,
Mm-hmm.
and then what happens to move them to a different level of functioning. And so, like, what are they going to say? But like, we all begin, everybody begins as an independent person. And so I call the first stage independence. And that's when, you know, you've noticed, you at the beginning, you were noticing changes in your mom's memory skills. Sometimes people do notice changes in their parents' rational thinking skills. They'll notice that nonsensical decisions are being made. And so the family members and the friends, maybe, like, sometimes it's the next door neighbors that get a hold of the kids and say, you know, I know you just get to come visit once or twice a year, but boy, I got to tell you, your mom's changing. And she's more than just forgetful, and I'm really worried about her, you know. And so, but we all start out independent and loving our independence. And so people will, they what you're hearing, like, if this is your mom, and I'm sure you went through this, where you're saying, mom, I think you need a little help. Can we bring somebody and have somebody begin helping you in the house? And her reaction is, well, thanks very much, but you're interfering. I am just fine.
Yep.
I don't need any help.
Exactly.
I know I'm a little forgetful, or, well, you know, I'm getting a little older, but no, I'm absolutely fine.
Yep.
And so when I was training Dawn Caregivers and I was running an agency, I've since sold the care agency in Moscow, Idaho, and it continues to be a Dawn agency, but I'm not running it anymore. But as I was, families would contact me and they would want a caregiver, and I'd have to say, okay, what's your mom say? What's your dad say? And they'd say, well, they don't think they need any help at all, and they don't want anybody inside the house. Oh, she's not keeping it as neat as she used to. Or the bathrooms are really dirty when we go to visit. There's bad food in the refrigerator. There's things on the counter that don't smell good. I know she's not taking the trash out as often. And so you have these concerns because you can see that this person who fiercely wants their independence is not doing as well as they used to. Generally, at that point, I recommend that if the person doesn't want any help, they refuse help. If you push too hard, they could lock you out, not just potential caregivers.
Yes.
They could stop going to church. They could stop letting the neighbors come over for tea. They could hole up inside their home and lock doors to everyone. And then you really have a person at risk.
Yes.
So we don't want them to refuse all help. Generally, I say, well, let's just have one of my caregivers, and I'll be thinking about somebody your mom might or your dad might enjoy seeing, spending time with. Let's just have them drop in, maybe Monday and Thursday, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, they'll pop in. What time of day do you think your loved one would most need help? Does she seem to need help getting started and getting going in the morning? Or does she get up and she's full of energy and she gets everything done and she's totally on top of things, and then she falls apart later in the afternoon? And so we'll start these drop-in visits, and people at first, they're tracking time. They know, they look at a clock, they can read it. They look at the calendar, they know the day, they know the month. They look around the house and they might not be doing as good a job as they used to do, but they're more or less getting it done. It's not sanitary anymore, but it's still sufficiently hygienic. And these people are still self-entertaining. They choose to go for walks. They choose to watch the news. They choose to take a hot bath in the evening. They choose to make a cup of coffee. This is the first stage. We who love them can tell that they are not coping or as safe as they used to be. But they're saying, those kids of mine are always interfering, or I'm just fine. I'm just fine. I'm just a little. So when we send that person to drop in, they don't force their way in. They just knock on the door, say hello, invite the person out. Hey, I'm just on my way to go get groceries. I thought I'd pop by. Do you want to come with me? Do you need any groceries? Hey, I was just going to go for a walk. It's a lovely day, and I don't have anybody to walk with. Would you like to go for a walk? And so then your loved one gets to exercise autonomy.
Yes.
Oh, thanks very much. But who asked you? Why are you here? Oh, my kids. Oh, my kids. They're just trying to take control. They don't understand
Yes.
just fine. And that will go on, but you're establishing a relationship of trust. And
Right.
when at this point, when we hear from the client, we'll be hearing, I'm fine. Thanks very much. Thanks for taking me for groceries. I just need to know. No need to come in. I'll just get out here at the curb. I'll see you later.
Mm-hmm.
And when they're saying, my kids, they're overly concerned and they keep interfering, the caregiver is saying, oh, but that means they love you.
Yeah,
You're
right.
really lucky because some people's kids don't even call. How fortunate you are that you have kids who love you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we're preserving dignity, we're preserving independence, but now you've got contact. And now you've got this potential friend, this potential caregiver who can and might be welcomed into the home. Well, here's what happens. That's stage one, independence. Now, at some point, while that person is alone, it could be during the day, it could be at night, something happens and
Of
they fail.
course.
Okay, so this I call the second stage, I call it uncertainty, because all of a sudden this capable elder or adult who's always been able to take care of themselves, all of a sudden they have found themselves faced with a problem they could not solve inside their own home.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it could be that they woke up in the night and they walked around in circles and could not place how long they've lived in that house or how they came to live there. It could be they woke up in the night and they couldn't figure out why their spouse wasn't there. It could be that during the day and they're just going through their daily tasks and putting a load of laundry in the washing machine
Mm-hmm.
that they've had for 10 years and all of a sudden they can't figure out how to use it.
Right.
Or they pull the lint trap out of the dryer and they go and empty the fluff into the trash and they come back and they're looking at a dryer and they got this thing in their hand and they cannot think of where it's supposed to be put
Exactly.
or why or what it's for. This is a senior moment. No, this is a cognitive error
Mm-hmm.
that shouldn't occur, and that individual will now be uncertain. Now they are afraid. Now they've lost self-confidence.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee you the very next day that they see a family member, or maybe it's that caregiver who's been popping by to see if they want to go for a walk, go, put gas in their car, do they need to drop by the post office, or would you like a cup of tea?
Right.
All of a sudden, they see that person. The very next time they see that person, they do want to go for the
Yes.
walk. They do want to go with you to the grocery store. And what's more, when you bring them back to the house, they don't jump out at the curb saying, thanks, see you later.
Right.
They say, would you like to come in for a cup of tea?
Mm-hmm.
Or will I see you tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
Because now we have a full-grown adult or an elder who is not sure that they're going to be okay because for the first time they have been unable to solve a problem in their own home. So this person says, will I see you tomorrow? Or would you like to come in? And now they're in stage 2. And here they are going to be starting and restarting and failing tasks, whether it's washing the dishes or putting out lunch or sweeping the floor, whatever it is, they're beginning to have enough change and loss to memory skills, rational thinking skills, and or attention skills that they really can't get tasks done on the first try. They restart and fail often. They now track time poorly. These people sometimes lose entire hours.
Yes.
They lose entire days.
Mm-hmm.
You come see them the next day and they say, what day is this? Did I see you yesterday?
Yes, exactly.
Is today Wednesday? And they're not sure. This is uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
Now, generally, they're okay. They're still doing okay. They have not started failing at the activities of daily living. You can't activate the long-term care insurance policy because it takes them a long time. They might need a little bit of prompting, but they can do it.
Right.
And they do it. And boy, They are devoted to getting stuff done and keeping their independence.
Exactly.
And this carries on for an unknown period of time. It depends on how quickly those cognitive skills are disappearing.
Mm-hmm.
If this person has a trauma, something traumatic happens, they will lose ground rapidly and they will fall into the next stage. And to me, the next stage is follow the leader.
Right.
Follow the leader. And this is when people start saying, oh, that doesn't matter, honey. I'll have what you're having.
Yes.
Or, well, whatever you like, doesn't matter. Anything's fine. These guys have lost sufficient memory skills or rational thinking skills, the ability to hold information in your mind and then to compare one concept or thing with the other. When they lose that, those abilities, and this can be predominantly losses of rational thinking skills, predominantly memory skills, or predominantly attention skills, depending on your type of dementia. But now they're follow the leader, and it's not because magically dementia has changed their personality. It's not this isn't dementia-related behaviors as if it were disease we're talking about. This is just human beings who are losing very specific cognitive skills. And now they can't make decisions because they can't hold information in their minds long enough to make one.
Right.
If you go to the restaurant, they're going to look at the menu, pretend they're reading the menu.
Yep.
And they'll say, well, what do I normally have here? I'll just have that.
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever you'd like, or, whatever's on sale, whatever the special is. These guys really need help with decision making. And this is where, with the Dawn method, I teach, sense of control. How do you help somebody make decisions when they're losing memory skills and rational thinking skills and attention skills?
Mm-hmm.
There's very specific ways to do that. And your goal here is to help them make decisions and feel in control of themselves and their lives.
Yeah.
Because the more in control I feel, the more easily I will accept direction.
Mm-hmm.
But this person can't make decisions by themselves. They need your help. They're not tracking time. They're not tracking days. They're probably not able to look at the clock and say to themselves, it's 5 to 3 and my daughter's dropping by at 4:30. So therefore I've got more than an hour. They can't do that.
No.
They look at the clock and it says 5 to 3 and they think 5 to 3. Let's see. And the calendar says Jessica 4:30. 5 to 3, 4:30. Oh gosh, I better just stay here in the kitchen because otherwise I might not hear her at the door. So now you find people in this stage, people are frozen. You'll find that they didn't do anything. They got up, they got their clothes on, they didn't eat breakfast because you had a 3 o'clock appointment with them today and they wanted to be ready. No tracking of time or days. And these people are not accomplishing tasks. They're just not. It might be that they're not noticing or recalling what a dirty sink means.
Mm-hmm.
They might see mold collecting around the sink on the countertop, but they don't any longer have knowledge of what that could mean.
Right.
These people might, open the refrigerator door and say, see, nothing to eat. I've got nothing to eat in my house. And you're looking at the refrigerator and you're seeing a carton of milk, half a dozen cartons of yogurt that you put there.
Right.
And a whole lot of Tupperwares, that are labeled lunch Tuesday, dinner Tuesday, meals you've prepared for them.
Mm-hmm.
They look and they see packages, but they don't see food inside of packages or packaging. You look and you have knowledge that inside that packaging is food. These people are losing initiative because one of the things we lose when we lose rational thinking is the ability to initiate action.
Mm-hmm.
So this person might know, I feel hungry, and they might know that feeling of hunger means I have to eat something.
Mm-hmm.
And they might even walk into the kitchen, but they've lost the ability to say to themselves, I like peanut butter sandwiches. So I'm going to get bread out of the fridge, peanut butter out of the fridge, and jam out of the fridge, and I'm going to put it all on the counter, and I'm going to put peanut butter on bread. And, they've lost this. And so they don't do it, even though they're hungry. But now this person is this follow the leader person.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely want caregivers or companions with them every day. You don't want them ever alone for an entire 24-hour period of time. Now, if they've had dawn caregivers and they've been learning how to feel safe even though they're confused, how to feel safe even though they cannot complete tasks without help from other people, if they've learned from their companions that they're safe being confused, they're safe being unable, and that inside their house is safe, and leaving the house alone is not safe, this person can still be living alone. And I've cared for many people still living alone at this point. But you definitely want caregivers who are there every day of the week for a period of time, 4, 6, maybe 8 hours, depending on this person's position in this stage. So that's number 3, is follow the leader. Such loss of skills that they're really unable to hold information in their minds and unable to grapple with it or do something with it. Then what'll happen, one day, this person who has been, maybe has never been huggy even, maybe your family was not a family that did a lot of hugging. Maybe this is a client who is, a really accomplished businessman or a professor or, somebody who wouldn't normally be reaching out to take your hand. All of a sudden, one day, this person, when you go to open a door and go into a building, or when you come into the room and then you're going to leave the room, they will follow you, and you find them trailing you through the house. Well, I just wondered what you were doing. I just didn't know where you were going. Or if you're outdoors, somebody walks up to you or you go to enter a building, that person will lean into you. They'll actually end up like shoulder to shoulder leaning into you. If it's, often older women will reach out and slip their hand around the arm of their caregiver. These people are, and I call this 4th stage, clinginess.
Yep.
Even the most austere, proud, independent individual will become clingy, and they'll demonstrate it by physically leaning in, by reaching out and taking your hand, by wanting to hold your arm, by following you from room to room. Why? Why do they do it? They do it because now they are really not able to make sense out of the world around them. They're having trouble processing sensory stimulation and analyzing it. So we receive sensory stimulation, what we see, what we hear, what we smell, taste, touch. All of that's delivered to us by our intuitive thinking skills. And we receive it in the present. There we are. But as we're losing memory skills and knowledge of the past, as we're losing rational thinking skills, we become less and less able to interpret that sensory data. So my screen door slams. I've lived in the house 56 years. Surely I know the sound of my own screen door slamming. No, I lose it. One day that's gone. And when I find myself startled by loud noises that like the kettle whistling,
Right.
Somebody dropping a pot in the kitchen sink, or the clatter of pots as you're cooking dinner. When you see your loved one is beginning to react without knowledge, fails to recognize your own reflection in a window after dark, walks into the bathroom and comes right back out and says, honey, there's an old woman in there. Right? What happened? They've lost knowledge that glass reflects, or mirrors are designed to reflect. They've lost the memory of the past knowledge to know that that's what they look like. They have not become crazy. They have not this is not inexplicable. This is simply losing memory knowledge of the past, and losing the ability to analyze that if I stand in front of a window or in front of a mirror, that will be me that I'm looking at.
Right.
So they have lost confidence to the point where they really need a lot more touch, and they need people to be there, be
Yes.
close. And so these people stay close, really close. If you go to church with your mom and she's at this stage,
Yep.
she might even say, well, honey, can I hold your hand as you're going into the building?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
Right?
mom
Yeah.
reaches out for me, and sometimes I used to reach out for her and she used to push me away. I don't need your hand. I can walk by
Exactly.
myself. And then eventually she would reach out for me and I would need to be
Yeah.
there to grab a hold of her because I knew what that was.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is because there's no knowledge of the past to draw upon,
Yeah.
and no ability to grapple with all this new sensory data that you're being faced with moment by moment. So these people need closeness. And now eye contact becomes really critical. Why? You know, if I lose all of my memory skills, that means I'm living in what Daniel Kahneman calls the psychological now. And it's 3 seconds long. Okay, so every 3 seconds, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. There you are. That's the experience of now. All right, so let's say we've got husband and wife, and wife is experiencing dementia. Husband is primary caregiver. They get up in the morning and he helps her get her house coat on, and he's saying, well, come on, honey, we should have some breakfast on. Let's make some coffee. And they sit down and they sit at the table and they drink their coffee and they eat their cereal. And then as usual, they get up and they walk into the living room, and he gives her the front section of the newspaper, and he settles down with the sports section of the newspaper. And about 20 seconds later, she's mad at him. What happened? And what happened was, every 3 seconds, she's living in an entirely new present, her concept of now. And she might have looked up every 3 seconds. And that means in the space of 20 seconds, she's looked up 7 times. And he's been ignoring her.
Exactly.
He has ignored her forever, right? Because each time she looked up, he wasn't looking at her. So somebody who's living without memory skills, no contact with the past, they need you to meet their eyes, to look at them and hold their attention, hold their eyes for 3 seconds. Because if you spend 3 seconds looking your mom in the eyes and sending her that message with your expression, with your eyes, Mom, I love you. I'm so glad to be with you.
Yes.
Then her entire experience is filled with the knowledge that you love her and you are glad you are with her. That gives dividends in mood management for hours.
So much.
And so all that husband had to do was look up and say, darling, meet her eyes. Darling, I love you. I am so glad we get to spend today together.
Right. And then back down to the paper.
And that's part of this stage. That's part of this part of clinginess, is eye contact is just as important as physical touch.
Yes.
But boy, if you've got a client who's living alone at this stage, and I've had many clients who still lived alone in their own homes at this stage. And I should say, by the way, if you haven't been moved out of your familiar home, you are functioning at a higher level than you would if you were moved. The reason being that you are using the tools of mindlessness. You are using automatic thinking scripts, and you're using muscle memory to get through your days. You're doing tasks on autopilot. Your body knows how to do it. So that's why you leave people where they are.
Right.
But only if you've taught them that they're safe inside their homes and that they need to have a companion if they want to leave. But now this person in this 4th stage, this clinginess stage, boy, you've really got to be watching. Food, are they eating? Are they losing weight? We would keep a bowl of fruit on the counter, and it would have apples, oranges, and bananas. And at first, we would see this person loves oranges, so all the oranges are getting peeled and eaten, and in the trash, there's orange peels.
Yep.
They're not fond of apples. Apples sit there, and they end up getting bruises on them.
Exactly.
Bananas, they like bananas. We can see that they go and get themselves a knife, this is sequencing. They slice the top and then they peel the banana, eat it, and that banana peel ends up in the trash. And then one day, during the stage of clinginess, generally, you'll notice that there's oranges with bite marks on them, on the peel. Why? Because they forgot that this is something where you remove the peel to get to the food. And the bananas are going brown sitting in the bowl, or you find ruined fruit in the trash uneaten.
Right.
This is where you're noticing whether or not this person understands hygiene any longer. And so these people will have one caregiver take the person out for a walk or a scenic drive or lunch, and another caregiver sneaks in the back door and cleans, puts everything back exactly where it was, but lift every item off the counter and sanitize it. Unscented wipes are critically important at that point. But, to expect this person to be eating properly on their own, exercising initiative to keep the home sanitary, or to be making safety good decisions to avoid risk, not happening. These people definitely need companions during the day. And now we're up to like 8 hours a day for sure. And then one day, so, to me, these stages, your stage by what they're saying. One day, and they might go back and forth. I had a woman whose son died unexpectedly in a motorcycle accident. She never forgot, and she bounced around. She was in uncertainty when he was killed. She went straight into clinginess. She bounced around a bit. She was in uncertainty for a day or two, but then, the memory'd come back. Bam, she'd be like, follow the leader right back into clinginess. Then she'd spend maybe a month and follow the leader, and then she's back into clinginess. And then she left, because this is how you know that your loved one is now extended to the 5th stage. And the 5th stage is overnight care. And you have to be ready, because one day out of the blue, this person who has been perfectly happy up to this point suddenly says, would you like to move in with me? Or they say, do you have to leave? Could you just stay tonight?
Right.
The minute they want somebody there overnight, boy, that's the night somebody's there.
Yes.
And so, with my care, by this time they'd have a couple of people in their care team, and they would know they had 3-4 friends that they spent time with and did various activities with. One of those people would be a student who, maybe a nursing student who couldn't really afford to live on her own, was living with roommates. Well, we would, give them I like having students where they go on duty at 6 p.m. at night, weekdays, and they go off duty at 9 o'clock in the morning. So Monday through Friday, from 9 o'clock in the morning till 6 p.m. at night, your live-in caregiver is off duty.
Yes.
So we would pay them a stipend that took into account that they were getting room and board and meals. And then we'd make sure they had a bedroom and a bathroom where they could be out of sight, out of mind, door shut, studying, or they could be gone. So a lot of times our caregivers would leave the house at 9 o'clock in the morning, return at 6 p.m. And then on the weekends, they're on duty 24/7. But that way, your primary caregiver doesn't burn out, and you get to have a number of people in the home. And that's the best way to know that there's checks and balances. It's the best way that the, for me, that I could tell the family, it's okay. We've got Christy and Heike and Sarah, and I'm the case manager. So all 4 of us are in the home at various times. And so, it's just safer, if you don't have just one person move into your mom's house and live there with no other eyes on the home or your mom. So, but this person who needs overnight care, they should never be alone at night. You want to have like a pressure mat next to the bed, a baby monitor, something so that caregiver knows the moment they get out of bed.
Exactly.
This person is still okay for maybe an hour or two after the overnight caregiver leaves in the morning. And they might still be okay for, say, an hour or two before the overnight caregiver comes back at night. When your overnight caregiver is there every night of the week at 6 p.m., the benefit is that your loved one then has a dinner routine 7 nights a week, evening routine 7 nights a week, bedtime routine 7 nights a week. That's the best way to preserve the habit of sleeping through the night. And then when they wake up in the morning, there's a morning routine. It's the wake up routine, the getting dressed routine, the taking a shower routine, because you really want that to be routine. And then the breakfast routine. And then they get rewarded with time alone in their own home. Autonomy and privacy. They still, at that point, a lot of my clients would believe that they were just helping out this nursing student because she couldn't afford to live on her own. And so she's a roommate. And what a lovely way to do it.
Right.
It's beneficial for everybody. So we would all just recognize the roommate, or if one of the caregivers was the one who moved in, well, it was because they were lonely living by themselves and they're just really enjoying having a roommate. But, this person is okay being alone so long as when your daytime caregivers appear and the daytime activities begin, your loved one was happy when the caregiver arrived. But the moment you arrive to find somebody in their own home, wandering around, distraught, saying, I don't know what I should be doing. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know what's wrong. These are indications that this person shouldn't be alone that long. And this is when they they stop recognizing people. They're forgetting names of people probably already, but now they're forgetting faces and they're forgetting relationships. Now, when you arrive now, it's taking your loved one longer to recognize that you are a person that she knows and loves. Now it's important that what you're doing is you're saying, hi, Mom. Hi, it's Jessica. Oh man, I haven't seen you since yesterday. It's so good to see you. You're giving them cues and clues when you arrive that you're an okay person. Now, these people, when we take care of these clients, you can see them. And me, they'd see me less because I was the case manager, but I'd be checking in and I'd be spending time with them, maybe an hour or two a week. So when I arrive, you can see people just kind of intuitively waiting. It's kind of like they're sizing you up, and it's not active. It's more like they're waiting for their intuitive powers to tell them whether you are known or not known.
Right.
They kind of sense you, and it's like, you're standing maybe 18 inches apart, and all of a sudden you can see them relax. It's like, oh, yeah. I know this is one of the good people that I know. And then they have no idea what your name is, but they know you're okay.
There's that sense of familiarity comes back.
Yeah, you see it. There's a delay. That familiarity will cease coming back eventually. And that's when we become the memory keepers and we become the storytellers. And that's when we pick up the baton of knowing and sharing, and we start saying, hi, Mom, it's Jessica. Oh, it's so good to see you. I come every day, and today is Tuesday, and today we were going to go for a walk, and it looks like it's lovely outside, and I'm just so glad to see you. And and my sister says to say hi. She hasn't been here for 3 days because she's been busy, and boy, her kids, like whatever it is, you're just kind of filling your mom in with chatter so that she doesn't have to feel embarrassed or nervous or at risk of offending you.
Right.
But then one of these days when, and so this period of time, maybe the daytime caregivers were coming from 11 to 4. So this person got 2 hours home alone in the morning, 2 hours home alone in the evening. But then they notice that she's a little distraught when they get there at 11. So now we're going to show up at 10, and we're going to stay till 5, or we're going to have activities that are going to keep her occupied from 10 in the morning till 5 in the evening. But when you show up at 10 o'clock and she's been alone an hour and she's not comfortable, that's when you show up at 9:30 and you stay until 5:30. And when you show at 9:30 and she's not comfortable, that's it. It is time for full-time care.
Yeah.
And that is the sixth stage. Full-time care follows overnight care. And full-time care is not what you receive in a care facility. Full-time care, the need for full-time care is the need for a full-time companion,
Yes.
not a single person. But it means this individual, whenever they are awake, they are unable to interpret the world around them. They need a coach, a companion, somebody who is narrating, explaining, sharing, enjoying, initiating everything.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are starting to lose their language skills. These guys are starting to live more inside. They're beginning to live an interior life more than an exterior interactive life. And this person desperately needs somebody with them at all times. And it just breaks my heart that in memory care units, there are people who are, we can't help it. I mean, who could hire full-time companions for everybody in every care facility?
I know.
But that's what we need. We need somebody who's always with us, or we need by this time to have learned that we can be safe if we don't know what's going on. We can be safe if we can't take care of ourselves. And if you've learned that back at the beginning, then it's much easier for you to be living in a facility where there aren't constant companions. And then people are more comfortable. And this is where, you know, the gradually people become less ambulatory,
Mm-hmm.
or a trauma occurs and that's it. You know, they fall, they break a hip, or they have some kind of a trauma, and then they're in a wheelchair, then they're in a bed, then they're you know, less and less able to communicate. But that's when we really pick up the baton.
Yeah, that's
and
when we
we
have
become
to.
the communicators.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do that for your loved one, you don't lose them to dementia. You will lose them to death, because we all die, and your loved one will die.
Right.
But you don't lose them beforehand. And if you are the communicator, and if you do spend time with them, telling them who you are, who they love, who loves them,
Mm-hmm.
and the good things they did in their lives, then that internal life has fuel, and they do whatever it is we need to do to lay our experiences to rest from a lifetime. And that's when you get these moments of pure clarity,
Mm-hmm.
when your loved one is right there with you again,
Right.
fully there. And these are moments, you know, but just like talking about beauty, that's where our moments of companionship are.
Mm-hmm.
That's where what our best memories are actually of, is those moments of companionship, those moments of beauty. So that's the 6 stages. We begin in independence,
Mm-hmm.
then we fail on our own and we become uncertain, and we move into uncertainty. Then we lose more of our skills, rational thinking, memory, and attention, and we move into follow the leader, where we need help with our decision making. And then we lose more of those skills and we become clingy, because our ability to interpret the world around us is fading. And then we get a fright at night, or something happens cognitively or subconsciously, and the person says, will you come? Will you stay? Will you move in with me? That's when we initiate overnight care.
Right.
And then at some point you find that this person is no longer comfortable being on their own. And that's when you initiate full-time care. So to me, that's what dementia looks like. That's the roadmap for dementia from
Absolutely.
the functional perspective.
Yes, you described that perfectly. And this is why I wanted the stages make a difference, because what you just described is that ever-changing present, the here now changing from this stage to this stage to this stage, and knowing what it's going to be, knowing what to expect, and making the preparations along the way. That is a huge stress reliever for the caregiver, but it's also helping your loved one find that quality of life within their new right now, ever-changing new right now moment. Thank you
Right.
so much for
Yeah.
explaining that.
That's the only way, and this took years. It was years with people, so many different people. I think I had a singular opportunity that I happened to be in this small town of about 20,000 people that was very unique in that, honestly, I don't think anybody locked their doors.
Back in the good old
And
days.
yeah, it was like 40 years behind the times. And it was a very tight community, ranchers and professors. The university was there, and people. There was a really strong community spirit from back in the 60s. There were some really influential people, and so when I began working with people, I got to see people in their own homes. I got to see what dementia looks like when people aren't forced to deal with all the other things that happen to us when you get yanked out of your home and thrown into a strange place that is group living for the first time in your life.
Right.
When you get taken from your home and put into a hospital medical facility, because that's what our care facilities really are.
Mm-hmm.
And that changes us to get to look at dementia where people could just be in their own homes. And with my clients, friends of mine would text me and say, Judy, Mary headed north on Blaine Avenue, just thought you might want to know. And I can text back and say, yes, thanks for telling me. She's on her way to her dentist appointment 2 blocks further north, and she's due there in 5 minutes. We were able to support people without taking away their autonomy.
Yes. And that's the beautiful part of all of it.
Yeah. And that gave me a chance to see dementia in its pure state.
Right. Up close and personal.
Yeah. And that's when you can see that it doesn't matter which type of dementia we're talking about. People go through functional stages due to the loss of specific skills.
Right.
And so then we can start thinking about them from a human perspective.
Yes.
Just how these skills change how we function. And then we don't have to be medical experts. Then we can actually support their emotional needs.
Yes.
So.
And now you can absolutely see why I really, really wanted Judy to come back on with me today, because there's so much depth to this information, and we are even still on the surface of all of this information, and being able to break this down. This is why I highly recommend that when you have the opportunity to look into the Dawn Method and find Judy's information on thedawnmethod.com, because this is where we are going to all make the biggest change. The more information we're exposed to, with better information, the more we're going to help our loved ones and help society, regardless if they're in that elderhood time of their life or this is early onset dementia. We are going to help them because we're going to understand how to help them and why we help them. Thank you so much for sharing this information with us today, Judy. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I so appreciate getting to chat with you. We always have such a good time.
We do, because this is a world that dementia calls you. When you find yourself in this, you have been called to this. And so rather than turn away from the calling, dig into it, ladies and gentlemen.
That's right. Don't resist, because boy, the beauty is in the moments, and the rewards are incredible.
Exactly.
I have never had more fun than when I get to hang out with people who are experiencing dementia.
Exactly.
And it's the same. I mean, I can't save our primary caregivers from all-nighters.
I know.
And that day in, day out, relentless duty. But within it, grab the moments. Search out the moments.
Exactly.
That's, whether dementia's in the picture or not, that's where quality of life is, in the moment.
It is. And on that note, thank you for joining in and listening with us today. You can find more about this topic on the blog at jessicalazelcannon.com. I hope this gave you more food for thought, ladies and gentlemen. And until next time, be proactive. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for joining us today. We really hope you've enjoyed this episode. To learn more about proactive caregiving and to hear other episodes of this podcast, please visit www.jessicalizelcannon.com. This podcast is produced by Cannon Light Media, LLC, www.cannonlightmedia.com. Music provided by Chris Paradise.
Mary redeemed a $50,000 cash prize playing Chumba Casino this year.
I was only playing for fun, so winning this was a dream come true.
Chumba Casino is America's #1 social casino experience. It's serious fun. With over 80 casino-style games to choose from, you too could win life-changing amounts of cash. Be like Mary. Log on to ChumbaCasino.com and give them a whirl. That's ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void or prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
The voice in the preceding commercial was not the actual voice of a winner.